really, really pushing hard on education, and that's not for nothing. You're in the loop with OSG because obviously, as when Cooney said, you're an innovator and you're someone who's also similarly championing the issue and really trying to innovate within, or I would even say beyond the system. So tell us about OSG, obviously tell us about you, but what are you guys working on that's so important right now?
Well, the essence of OSG is about youth empowerment, right? And utilizing our network of school leaders, principals across the country, and being able to achieve that. So as a former school leader myself, I realized the importance of creating that narrative that, principals don't have to be tight, they don't have to be unapproachable, they can have swag.
Yeah.
They could wear fitted hats, they could wear, nice gear, they can wear sneakers and still be a great leader. So when I was a principal, that was one of the things that I think stood out to me the most, is that whenever I went to work without a suit on, whenever I was in a different kind of drip, it was always that those families and those students would be like, yo, Mr. McKee's, he like, wait a minute. Like, they assume that I'm wearing a suit from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, and even in my pajamas, it must be a suit because I'm not supposed to look like this. So I was very unapologetic about being myself when it came to being a school leader. But I also felt that what was happening was that young people got an opportunity to see me in a different light. Absolutely. Unlike, I think, Jordan, you had said it earlier, like, again, no principal that you ever known looked like me. And so I want to give kids the opportunity to choose this profession and feel like they don't have to lose themselves and lose their identity, that they can still be swagged out and they can still, have those things that they want in life and be themselves. So as a school leader, that's kind of like that biggest thing. And I'm surrounded now as a consultant that works with principals all across the country with swagged out people just like myself. So it was great to form this coalition called, All School Ground, OSG as we call ourselves. But it was really important for me to put this crew together so that our young people and aspiring leaders can actually see what's really happening in education, because it's definitely not what y'all think it is.
It's different, and one of the things that I think that Jordan and I have talked about offline is that there is such a dearth of black men within education. And like you said, especially within urban settings, you just do not see people that look like you within those spaces. Tell us about your journey starting as even a teacher and working your way up to principalship.
Well, let me just go back and something you just mentioned about what appears to be a lack of black male, educators and leaders. Believe it or not, there are a lot more out there. There are a lot more even female black leaders out there than you would even know. Yeah. Primarily because of the narrative. We're never dope. We're never great principals. We're the principals who occasionally will get a spotlight on a news broadcast because of something we did. But that's what those people do every day. So I want to make this clear that when you talk about educational leadership and you talk about black educators and black excellence, it's a lot more prevalent than people think it is. It's just not as visible. So what I'm looking to do is to create that platform where people get to see how dope black principals are and that they actually exist. Because it's funny, when I got them in the room the first time, when I get them in the Zoom conference every week, it's amazing to them that I'm actually in a room with 90 other people who look just like me. And so that goes to show that even they are unaware of really what's out there. And to go to your question about even as a teacher, again, as a teacher, I felt the same way, that I wanted to be me. I didn't want to be something that somebody else had created for me in terms of an educator. Yeah. I wanted to get up in the morning. I wanted to go to work and love my job. I wanted to love being around kids. I wanted to always do the things that I love to do, which was play golf, play basketball, hang out with the kids, laugh, joke, listen to music. That's what I wanted to do as a school leader. That's what I wanted to do as a teacher. So it was paramount that I didn't lose my identity. Yeah. It was just paramount in who I became. And now I'm surrounded by so many other educators who are doing the same thing I'm doing.
Mhm.
So I don't necessarily feel like I'm just the exception to the rule. There are a lot of us out here doing those things.
Yeah. You know, I think that you're right. I said I hadn't had a principal that looked like you. I didn't. And I obviously mean that, you know, in terms of, like you say, you got swag, you're a part of the culture. But also, every administrative person, literally, in my life coming up, and you may or may not relate to this, when Cooney was a white man. I mean, I went for a good portion of my schooling to a Catholic school, and so naturally that might have been the case, but I also saw how that impacted young black men.
Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't look like the principals, they didn't look like the deans, but they didn't relate to them. And I think it really robbed them of, you know, an educational experience where they could have gained a mentor, they could have gained a role model. I mean, how can you see that sort of lack of connection with administrative folks impacting our boys?
Well, again, it's really not about it not being there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about if you almost, I think people look at themselves and observe things in this bubble. If this is what I'm experiencing and this is what the reality is.
Yeah.
And it's just because you didn't have a black principal growing up or black male principal doesn't mean that your friends didn't or that your cousin didn't or that, you know, somebody else in your family didn't. So I think it's important to know that just because I don't necessarily see, you know, a train every day doesn't necessarily mean that trains don't exist.
I like that.
You know
I
what I mean?
like
And so
that.
you gotta kind of put yourself in a situation where you realize that, you know, black males are not, you know, we're not UFOs. Like we're not, you know,
Unicorns.
we're not unicorns. Like we are real people doing real things every day. And, you know, without taking anything away from black female principals who's out there killing it too, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, OSG has an amazing crew of dope principals, male and female.
Yes.
And I'm just saying it's the same thing. Just like you haven't seen many black male principals like me, there's a lot of people who are going to grow up and say they didn't see a great black female principal either.
Yeah.
But I want you to know that they exist. And I'm going to make it my business every day to actually highlight those things and make sure that the world know that we are out here and we're doing great things. And it's taking nothing away from any other school leader, because I love school leadership. I love education. But I'm just telling you that there is an underrepresented crew of dope people out here leading schools across this globe. And I'm driven to make sure that the world knows about it. I feel that it's my professional, but more so my moral responsibility to let the world know that black principals are out here doing great things every single day.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Dennis. I think what you touched on is changing the narrative, changing the way society perceives us, because we do exist, we are in these spaces, but unfortunately the mainstream media has not been paying attention to that. And I think that's the beauty of being here at Name Dash Studios, is that we are focusing on things that have been historically not focused on. People like you, and elevating these stories because they do exist, right? This is not fake. We're not in the Matrix, right? People like Dennis exist.
Absolutely.
And uplifting their stories, I think, is really what's paramount in today's society. So I want to commend you personally on the work you're doing within our communities and uplifting and connecting other principals, because I can only imagine the types of things that are coming out of those types of conversations.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, when we talk about that, you know, the Matrix, right? It's funny that we don't necessarily, as people of color, don't necessarily think of ourselves as people being in this Matrix. We are actually just doing what we do every single day. It's society as a whole that tries to put us in a different situation, a different circumstance, to make us feel as if we stand out. Nah, we do the same thing every other principal does. We get up every day, we sacrifice our families, we sacrifice our health, we sacrifice everything that we're doing to do what's best for children. And I feel like it's very important that people know that even now, in the midst of COVID, there's a lot of principals that got to go back to school. And a lot of principals who are struggling with that every single day. That anxiety's kicked in, that fear is kicked in, the choices that they have to make for themselves and their families have to kick in. And all I'm saying is, the reason why it may hit a black educator a little bit harder, because we don't always have that inheritance. We don't always have that backing, that financial backing for us to make the decision to just say, I'm not going.
Yeah.
You know, and I think what Dame has always kind of pushed them to think about was, okay, so what are we going to do about it? Like, if if something happens again a year from now, another catastrophe happens, are you more prepared next year than you are this year?
That's right.
So the whole concept of this is, I'm also pushing principals to think about things as entrepreneurs and be able to push themselves to think outside of the job, right? Because I ran the gamut when it came to education. But now I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur. I've changed the narrative. I let people understand that, they call, say, yo, D, come out to Wyoming. There's, the situation I want us to deal with Kanye. I don't have to ask nobody nothing.
That's right.
Say that.
I don't have to put in no time slip asking can I take the day off and stuff like that. Same thing with this. I spoke to Dame Sunday, told Dame I was gonna come out here for a couple of days. One day, you know what I'm saying? I'm out here with him for 2 days, going back home. I don't have to check in with nobody. And I don't mean it in a sense that it's wrong to have a job. I'm just saying if that's your only means of building a legacy, you're already behind the 8 ball. So I definitely think that this conversation is necessary because I also want black leaders out there who don't necessarily have the comfortability of deciding that they don't have to go back to work. I want them to think about, well, if another catastrophe happens next year, are you more prepared?
Yeah.
That's pivotal. I want to take the time to kind of talk about you in terms of, you touched on something. What did life after Principalship look like for you specifically? And what are you reimagining that to look like for other principals?
Yeah, well, when I was a school leader of a very successful charter school in Harlem, we would have...
Shout out to y'all.
Yes, shout out.
They're kind of notorious. He's being humble right now.
Yeah. So what stood out to me most when I was a principal is that we would have people from all across the globe coming to sit down with me and a few of my colleagues at the organization asking us, what exactly can we do? What can we take back to Green Bay, Wisconsin? What can we take back to Tampa, Florida? What can we take back to Africa? What can we take back to the places that we want to replicate what you've done? So what happened was we became the model of excellence when it came to education. Wow. And moving that agenda was really important to me. And I felt like after leaving principalship, okay, where I had dozens, if not hundreds of people visiting us on an ongoing basis, asking us about how we did what we did, now I'm going out to them. So leaving principalship, it was an organic move into the work as a consultant because I was doing it then, but I was a principal at the same time. So leaving the job as a principal to now, run several businesses now, it's really important for me to let people know that I had the plan before I even left principalship. I started my first started my first company, which is In Our Best Interest LLC, which is my consulting company. I started that while I was a principal. Wow. And oddly enough, I sat on it for about a year. But I knew that when I left out of there, I probably wasn't going to work for nobody else again. I had enough confidence in my ability. I had enough confidence in my track record that I felt that I could continue to do this work and support school leaders across the country. So leaving principalship, I already had in my mind I was getting ready to do. And so all of my principals now that I speak to, that's the whole thing too. I want you all to have your business. I want you to have those things available to you that if you decide you want to leave, okay, leave. But now you got businesses behind you, got books behind you, got movies behind you. You have all those things that can make you rich. That would basically, I had a conversation with some young people the other day, and I tell people this, especially young people, enjoy what you do, but make a lot of money doing it.
That's right.
Because it almost feels like we make, especially young black children, feel that it's wrong to want to be rich, or that money don't grow on trees, right? So what are you basically saying to that young person? That I have to work hard every single day in order to become wealthy, and that's really not the truth. It's actually being able to work at the things that you love, being able to put the time and effort into it, and then continue to build that empire. And that's the conversation that I have with people all the time. Like, stop assuming that wanting to be rich is a bad thing. Like, it's not. Like, I still love kids just as much as I did when I was a principal.
Yeah. And you don't have to struggle to do that.
Absolutely. I refuse to.
I think we predestine the black psyche of a child to struggle. Like, you have to have a 9 to 5. And for me, that's a predestination for failure because I'm like, man, what I look at as success is being able to send past that. A 9 to 5
Well,
is great, but what else? And I think a lot of people, especially within the educational profession, it's often looked at as such a noble profession because we know teachers may not make a ton of money. Principals make more, but we know that in the educational space, people may not make a lot of money. But what's so wrong with being your own business owner and still pouring back into the field of education?
But again, it's me saying that for those who've been doing it, keep doing it.
Yeah.
Those who didn't do it, I'm just telling you, start doing it. Because right now, education and the profession that we grew to love is changing right before our eyes.
Yes.
And tomorrow isn't guaranteed to any one of us. And I think we've got to begin to put things in motion that sets up our future and the future for our families as well. So I am saying to principals out there, to educators out there, to school leaders out there, think about what's next. And I don't mean a year from now, I'm talking about right now, what's next for you. And you may not have much longer to think about that because education as we see it is changing. Kids aren't going to school. They're not going to physical buildings anymore.
Yeah.
Or they're doing it in very, short numbers, small numbers. So that means as a principal, we got to say to ourselves, our numbers are going to go, our enrollment is going to go down, which means our budgets are going to be decreased. How are we going to continue to sustain this type of lifestyle for ourselves? So the young, aspiring black leader who wants to run a school may not get an opportunity now, right? Because of the fact that there's really not going to be much of a need for as much personnel as we once saw in actual school buildings.
You're so right, Dennis. I would love for you to tell us, I know you talked about how you pass on those principles of autonomy, of business ownership, of entrepreneurship that we never learned in high school. I think what I remember from my AP economics class was learning about CDs and learning about investment funds and things like that, but not necessarily how to make it to the steps that would give me an investment fund or even engaging with one. But what I want to know and what I would love for you to share with people is, what are some of the initiative-based approaches that you're taking to ensure that you're passing this on to your folks? And then how can they even support OSG or you personally, your businesses in those efforts?
Yeah, one something that I'm very proud of. I obviously working with principals all the time and working with school leaders and teachers and things like that. It's very inspiring to me as well. It's something that's very rewarding. But there's something else that I didn't want to lose sight of, which was the young people, the kids. I wanted to continue to do things with and for kids. And so a good friend of mine, Curtis Hobby, started a youth investment group with a group of kids, and they have a podcast now called Fundamentals, the Fundamentals of Investing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so they asked, I was actually their first interview.
Wow.
I was their first interview, and it's funny, I love young people, so you get them in the room, and everybody's tight. Oh my goodness, we're about to interview this successful man and things like that. And I had to say, hold on, y'all, this is a conversation.
Right.
Let's have a good time with this and stuff like that. And so now, if you go on my Instagram, the official OSG, you'll see pictures of them in their confident states now. Like they're so confident. So since then, I think
that's gotta be amazing to watch.
It is. And right now, I believe they've done 8 to 9 different podcasts already.
Wow.
With a lot of them, with other investors and businessmen and women, and also too, they had Anthony Anderson that was on.
That's amazing. Shout out to Howard alum.
Yeah. So to see those type of things is great, right?
Yeah.
And then to bring them in the room with the OSG crew, so the OSG crew can support their movement and stuff like that is amazing. Another one is I have a young, one of my former students. I had him since he was in kindergarten, right? And his name is Jason Williams. And Jason had a very troubled childhood. His mom's loved him to pieces, but he had a rough way to go.
Yeah.
And I basically said at that point, I'm going to make sure that Jason's successful. I'm going to make sure that Jason, no matter how many times I want to just throw Jason out to school, I'm not going to do it. I got to love him hard. And so fast forward, Jason now 21 years old. Jason called me, he calls me Pop. He called me his dad, right? Because I'm pretty much the only dad he's ever known.
Yeah.
And he said, yo, Pop, he sent me a text and he said, give me a call. I said, what's going on, Jay? He said, Pop, I bought my first house.
Whoa!
Ownership.
That's awesome.
21 years old, he bought his first home. And he then hit me up last week and said, Pop, guess what? I got my second house.
That's
What?
amazing.
So he has 2 homes.
That's a legacy.
Exactly. He runs it, he is into real estate right
Okay.
now, so he's doing amazing things. So that's another thing. And then something happened this morning. So I have, so I was doing little bits here and there with other kids throughout the country, but also throughout the globe.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
I started something along with some colleagues of mine who from Scotland and the UK. Shout out to Jess and Rachel and Toya, Akbar Cook as well. So their organization is called Teach Through Love, I believe it is.
Okay.
So we got together and we said, you know what, let's just do something for the kids. So now we turned it into TLOSG, Teaching Love OSG, Off School Grammar. So we had,
That's tough.
it is, so we got kids from the UK, Scotland,
Wow.
Tanzania, and America together on Zoom conferences talking about leadership and leadership development and stuff
I
like
love that.
So the Tanzania crew, I got a chance to really meet them.
Okay.
And one of the mothers whose daughter is on there all the time, she has a daycare center out there.
Okay.
So she asked me if I would be willing, if I could, help get some supplies out to Tanzania. And I was like, sure, I'll do what I can. And so she didn't, for them, they'll take secondhand anything. And I'm saying, no, that's not excellence. Like, I'm going to send you new stuff.
Mm.
And so that went over real well. They posted on Instagram the little kids using the materials that they bought, which was dope.
That's heartwarming.
And then she reached out to me last week and asked if I could help support. They wanted to do a basketball court in their town because there's no basketball courts in their town. They don't teach basketball there. Everybody plays soccer. And her daughter, who's now in high school, loves to play basketball, but she has to travel. But in the back of her daycare center, she actually has land that she can create a basketball court. So she reached out to me and asked, can OSG help out a little bit? I said, listen, right now, I love what y'all are doing. You want a basketball court? We'll help you get a basketball court. So I got on the call with her today, along with the architect. And in the next 3 to 4 weeks, they'll have their first basketball court in their town.
That's exciting.
With OSG logo in the center of the court.
Oh my, you gotta send us pictures of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess ultimately what I'm saying is that no matter how much I love on my principals, no matter how much I love on the adults that I support all the time, it's always going to circle back to kids.
It's important that y'all are bonded by love.
Absolutely.
James Baldwin said, not too many people have died because of, too much love, but there are so many who are dying because of lack thereof.
Absolutely.
And that's what it really boils down to, I think, and you've articulated when it comes to our culture and our children, no matter where, everywhere in the world. I think that is so important and essential.
And honestly, Dennis, I hope you get a chance to go out to Tanzania because I haven't been myself, but I hear it's absolutely breathtaking.
If you need some aids on the trip, let us know.
We'll be the snow.
Right.
So funny, she asked today, she was like, it would be so great if you could come out here and things like that for the ribbon cutting. And I said, well, even if we do Zoom for now, that's fine. But I will eventually get out there.
Yes.
OSG will eventually get out there and represent, for those who actually love kids. Because I can tell you this: if I approached a dozen principals, 100 principals, thousands of principals, asked them would they do the same thing, 100% of them would say yes, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I don't think of myself as somebody who's doing something that principals don't do. I just feel like I'm in a position to be able to tell them and to tell the narrative of, if y'all haven't checked out your black leaders that are running these schools, now is the time because they're doing some dope things.
Sure.
And now I'm going to make it my business to create that narrative that black educators and black leaders, principals in particular, are dope beyond dope.
That's amazing. I have one last question.
Sure.
I always like to tie things back to politics. And one of the questions that a lot of people ask me is, okay, how can I utilize my voice in elections? So can you tell us about the relationships between superintendents and principals in schools, as well as Board of Education leaders on a more national level. How does that affect people actually at the local school level?
Well, I guess in all honesty, it affects it, but it doesn't always affect it in the most positive sense, right?
Well, that's important to know about.
What I want people to understand is that school, there is such a thing as school reform, but it's usually done on the state level. But real school reform happens in the school building every day.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? I think when we start having those conversations about school reform, it's always including politicians and everybody else, except the principals. So if we're talking about school reform and the things that need to change in communities, you don't need to look no further than the school leaders. And I think we need to bring them to the table more frequently about decisions that have to be made for education, educators, and for young people. Those decisions, and again, it's the higher you go, the less involved you become with kids. And so you end up making decisions based on theory or based on, what you think is the appropriate data to use, when in all actuality, all you have to do is go to the school. All you got to do is look at the community. If you see that kids are struggling with, basic standards, the reality of it is that that's not necessarily going to be fixed on a state level. You talk to the principal and give them the correct amount of money to actually bring the programs, the supplementary materials into the building so that the kids can achieve those things. So I think, I don't go too high when it comes to discussing about politics, because I really believe that even now we got an election coming in the next month and a half, and I've heard very few of the candidates talk about what they're actually going to do with education.
Unfortunately.
And I'm saying but then everybody's telling you to go out and vote. I'm saying if I'm an educator and if that means something to me, I'm waiting for somebody to tell me.
You want some real.
I want some real.
What's on the menu?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to just keep talking about, the unrest in the world, because the reality is that a quality education is a great equalizer. And we got to say to ourselves that, right now, did we let the genie out the bottle and try now to put him back? Because when it stopped being about kids, when it stopped being about education, unfortunately we're lost. And right now we got a lot of work to do, a lot of catching up to do for us to say, you know what, that we're doing what's best for kids. Because right now, when you want to think about who's doing best for kids, you go into those schools, you see those principals, you see those teachers, you see those assistant principals, those guidance counselors, those custodians, and everybody on the school level. If you want to see who generally loves kids, you ain't got to look no further than your local schools.
Mic drop, honestly.
Well, Dennis, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you. We've obviously read about you and we learned about you through Dane, but it's been a real treasure actually listening what your plans are to make sure that, the way you came into the school system and the way that we came into the system is not the way that we leave it behind. I think that's so important, and it's inspiring, to be honest. I would like for you to remind people how they can continue to support OSG or to even look out for your work.
Absolutely. Again, you can check us out on Instagram, the official OSG. You can find us on Facebook, the official OSG. And again, all of my principals who follow me, follow them. And again, you'll see some amazing things there. So in terms of the support that you all give, again, just continue to support the work that we're doing on social media right now. And then we'll continue to, open up other opportunities for people to give and to support what we're doing.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And y'all check out his gear. It's very fly.
I know, look at this.
It's the original OSG. And so y'all make sure you guys find him.
Why you gonna be giving me my props? Oh yeah. By the way,
shout out
to my man Dave Dash. Let me see if I can find this little patch.
But I also did design the logo.
All right, so
there's tell us the tea.
So Dane, you can come over here for a minute. Dane, it's important. It's important that people know that this ain't just a conversation about education. This is about, us partnering together on some other big deals. And I think right now, when we talk about OSG, I have to. I'll be remiss if I didn't tell you that this man right here, the legend, Dane Dash,
got the real OG.
Yeah, the real OG, who's here, came on. Matter of fact, let me tell you how it was funny how it went. When I started OSG, we did 13 weeks of OSG. Dane came on the 5th week with Dougie Fresh, and Dane ain't left.
Wow.
And what Dane told
us,
that's
commitment.
No question. You know what Dane told us by that time, maybe by the 2nd week, I'm gonna help make all of y'all rich. And he said, you know what, I'm gonna even get working on the merch. And he started on that merch. And right now, what I'm wearing and OSG's wearing, what Dame wears, OSG, Dame is the brainchild behind that. So I gotta give him his props. I gotta give him his
But I
props.
want to thank you for that. But the thing is, because I'm an artist, everyone doesn't like always recognize certain things I do artistically.
Okay.
I designed that.
It's very fly.
No, meaning like I designed the logo. I made the logo.
Can you tell me about like the thought ideation process behind it? Because I love it.
The Ivy
So-
letters.
I wanted it to be collegiate but hip hop. So I took the font from Run DMC and I purposed it like Run DMC's font.
Wow.
And then I got this to make it more collegiate but cool. And I wanted it to look feel like the Yankees.
I love that. And
That's why the Yankees are blue. So you see the red OSG.
that's not you.
That's
That's a knockoff.
That's not a
That's
position.
why.
And Dane was wearing some fly OSG gear yesterday
Yeah, that
too.
was it. It's probably the same shit.
Yeah,
What were you
yeah.
showing us? Dennis?
Yeah, it
Were you
was-
showing us something?
yeah.
There was something on
Is
the.
Whoa.
it Desco?
So we got the Dusco patch right here.
Wow.
Right, and then the BD.
Yeah, we got
Right here, the D dash.
That's embroidered.
All right, Dennis is modeling for us.
Right,
Yeah, come
I was
on,
like, what?
multifaceted.
I designed this logo too, by the way.
I love this. This
It's
is
red.
Yeah,
all
it's
school
red.
ground.
I designed that one too.
Yeah, but you know what?
And
But
the
no,
signatures there.
yeah, but what he gonna say? Oh, you said, oh, my signature.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I said the signatures there. These are.
I'm just saying, you see the description you gave for everything else you helped do?
Because I designed it.
I'm just saying, so you don't like the logo? I mean,
I said
my signature?
it's not creative. It's just the signature.
Okay, all right.
All right,
It's not supposed to be a logo.
we got two
So
masterminds
listen,
here.
so Dane, you know what? And
That's why I
I'm
got the little BB. That's a logo.
yeah, and I'm glad you said that because that's what before I jump on the plane tonight to go back home, you and I are gonna come up with a logo for
Yeah.
logo for off school grounds.
Heard it here
That is
first.
the logo.
I mean, well, for the gig, for the merch.
Well, what you need, we'll talk about it.
All right, all right.
We got the two legends in the building. We got Dave Dash. We got Dennis Akizi. It's been an absolute pleasure, gentlemen. We're looking forward to the new merch. Make sure you tell us where we can find it.
This is not merch. This is made in America. This is design. It's cut and sew. It's a clothing line. This right here is a collaboration.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So like the other merch will probably won't have the DB on it.
Okay.
Actually no. Merch is. I just can't call it merch. Just like calling it Ralph Lauren.
This is art.
Put it like this. You see this logo?
Yes.
It's Ralph Lauren. I don't usually wear it. But I like the color. I make one myself. But it's the logo. It
Yes.
doesn't say Ralph Lauren.
You just know it.
You just know it. And you wear it on clothes. It represents clothes. You know what I mean? So it's fashion. So it'll be like, how do you call Ralph Lauren merch? So like, when you look at the US Open, he's sponsors it every week, every year. And the ball boys boards are wearing it, But it gets sold in Macy's and in Bloomingdale's like a clothing line. It's not looked at as much. So the narrative is always important.
Yeah.
And with the principles, they're not to say program, but they're in a pattern. They're used to educating, and then also sometimes they have to be taken, they have to give it orders. They have no choice but to give curriculums that are given. So what I found interesting about the principles is they were doing beyond the curriculum that was given. They were caring. Caring wasn't in the curriculum.
Right.
And also not depending on, what they I can't call them their superiors because they're not. But whoever's considered their boss or whatever, don't depend on them because to me that's our oppressor.
Right.
The
Right.
education that's been implemented now has been, strategic to make a school look like a jail and a courthouse.
Yeah.
And to keep people in to be educated behind a desk in the morning till night and wake up that early and be away from your parents and only see them when you're tired.
And that's
That's
not how
strategic.
kids learn. Right.
It's not. And if you look at real history, before our oppressor gave us supposed structure, I didn't see no schools and no hieroglyphics. Have you?
No.
Not one.
Everybody.
Did they talk about? I didn't get about no schools in the Bible either.
I think the idea of how schools are now is not how it was originally
Of
intended
course,
to be.
if an oppressor tells you it's school, it's slave training, and you don't know it. Again, like my issue, and again, the first time I got on with them, they were almost like a little bit like, damn. Because I was like, why this, why that? I'm like, why? I went to school, no one taught me about farming, paying taxes, being an entrepreneur, about voting, about lobbying. Why was there so many distractions? You know what was available for me? Basketball was there every day. So it was either basketball or shit that I'm not interested in. Or that's going to teach me to have a 9 to 5. Of course you're going to choose basketball, but basketball is loud. So now all these kids are looking at basketball because that's the alternative. Like basically school gives you like, yo, you could either do a 9 to 5 or you could take care of your family and play basketball and don't pay no attention to school. And what's a kid going to choose?
And that's what a lot of black boys are given, just that choice, or jail, which is that third choice.
Well, that's the reason why the schools conveniently look like jail. So when I go to court and every jail I've been, I'm like, man, this shit look just like school. Same lighting. Why? When you build a new school, why would you build it like that? Why would you not curve or correct the curriculum? So the OSG has been developing curriculums, books. Like they ain't gonna do nothing for. We'll do it. I'm personally going to make or enhance schools underneath the OSG one at a time. So we start with and then I'm talking to like principals like that make me like this school. I can't call it merch because I will wear it.
Akbar Cook.
This shit fly. You got Koei Ponds and shit. You got beauty salons and banks.
Oh wow.
Climbers down, grades is up, chips, the ring, and he's principal. And the thing is, everything he's doing, he do it first. And then say, I did it. And it's funny because I be hearing about other people, I ain't want to talk about it but on the Zoom, but other people that's supposed to be hiring him saying he's acting like a big shot, blah, 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 big-headed. Yeah, that's right. Unless somebody's saying that you ain't doing it right. Unless you're not disturbing, unless somebody's like, yo, he's acting funny, he ain't doing it right. So what you have to accept as a principal is that is coming. When you do something disruptive, when you do something different, when you shake up the system, people are going to, at least one, the person whose job is at stake, the person whose job is about to get taken, is going to be the one that's going to try to block everything. That's what happens when you put yourself in the program. But what he's showing is, OSG, 90 principals stick together, we don't even need them. We were in a position to say, yo, you ain't got to go back to school, we'll hire you.
Wow.
Or we not even hire you, we'll just make sure whatever money you're not getting, we got it for you. That's the security they have. Like if somebody bothering one OSG, the whole OSG showing up, and my whole army showing up, and the bishop's army showing up, the senator's army showing up, the congressman's army showing up, Kanye's army is showing up. Yeah. He has to because he showed up for him.
And that's a beautiful thing. We don't see that sort of unionship within black and brown people in education.
You know what it is? It's that bullshit where it's like better than you. It's not to help us to keep you out. That's what we call it. To me, I call it the high yellow nigga syndrome. You know what I'm saying?
Speak on it.
High yellow niggas be sneaky as fuck, and they're actually they more racist than white people.
It was the slaves that were presiding over the other slaves.
Well, the ones that are getting employed by a master.
Yeah.
The ones that when you say, yo, I got the plan to be free, they tell them. Because they don't want to
the Uncle Toms of the world.
A lot of times in our interviews, we talk to people about running for office or how they feel people can make an impact. But I think what you just articulated is so powerful because that's better than running for office. Right. You don't have to be sold out by somebody's donation or contribution. You just take your whole community under your arm and make it what you think or what you absolutely know it should be.
Well, all you have to know is how to get a law passed. That's what a lawmaker's supposed to do.
Yep, legislator.
Legislator. So when you got celebrity on your side, you could bring awareness to a law and lobby for it and get it passed. That's why the president is useless. He can't get no laws passed. Everything he do is an executive order. Because he don't know how to talk to the Senate or talk to Congress. And he can't get to the Senate without getting past Congress. So unless you even know how to talk to Congress or get a law passed or how to lobby, you're useless. Because at the end of the day, a president can't just say, yo, do this. He has to actually politic, talk, make whatever he wants famous, and it has to do favors. It's a lot of shit in politics. That's why I'm not in it.
I get you.
My politics is drop the bag. That's it. What I notice is when you drop the bag, everybody acts right. And that's that.
You know, I was reading a quote the other day from the economist Andrew Lewis, who said, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, right?
Ooh.
And so when I think about what Dame has been saying, it's like, okay, these cameras, they ain't paid for.
Yeah.
Right? Ownership.
So he don't, and so that's ultimately what it boils down to, is ownership. So everything here, nobody can come in here and snatch this from Dame. Nobody can shut down his production. No one can tell him he can't shoot and shoot movies and shows and things like that. Why? Because he bought that product. And ultimately, there's a lot of people who try to dispute that. But go and think about it. If you don't own it, they own you.
No, you're absolutely right. Especially if you're a person of color, especially if you're a black person. So I have a question, Dane, while we have you here. I know you're working on building some schools. Between the two of you, what is going to be different about the architecture of the school? How the teachers dress, how the principals dress? Because you guys both mentioned that has a lot to do with how the students learn.
So we were looking at a school in South Carolina. We were going to make it a country club. Because in South Carolina, that's ultimately, when you get money, that's where you live, in a country club. That's where you want to go. So we wanted it on some water. We're gonna have studios, places to sew, places to paint. We're gonna have farms. It's music, food. We were like, if we can, because a lot of times, a lot of people go to school to get away from their homes.
Yeah.
That's their escape. And having a place for lodging. If there's ever another pandemic, very digital, it's very important to understand how to educate people from the house. And that's the big issue right now that we're being pushed into quicker. But I always find the light in the dark, so I just feel like he said, the system's fucked up anyway. This is a great time to build a new one. And, even just being on the Zooms and talking to him, I learned that, a kid goes to school 8 hours a day, but only retaining 45 minutes if he's lucky.
Wow.
And that means that classes could be shorter.
They need to be.
And then when you think about what the teaching was, like if you edited all the bullshit that you don't use, like I was at the table with my daughter, Tallulah, the other day, and I'm like, what math do you do? I'm like, algebra? She's like, yeah. I was like, you want to be an engineer? No. You're never going to use algebra again in your life. I know I haven't. In any business that I'm in, I'm not Elon Musk, you know what I'm saying? So I don't do algebra. So I just think that if there's like an interest, then maybe people should have a choice to take an algebra. Or like I know Latin, it prepares you for certain fundamentals. I don't give a fuck about Latin. You know what I mean? I don't. So like if you could edit the things that aren't going to help you in life, like even with the history, like now that I know history, I'm like, I don't want to hear what you got to say. It's about Christopher Columbus, Thanksgiving. I don't want to hear none of that shit because it's racist.
And it's all lies, most of it.
Exactly, and it's racist.
I'm excited to see OSG trying to get this going because I'm saying we should have to, our schools especially, should have to stop abiding by rules that do not work for us, that were not built around us. I was just what you were saying. In high school, I took Mandarin Chinese. They talked about how that would be good for business for us. I don't speak Spanish. You know what I mean? Like I don't speak French. They wanted us to learn what you would speak in a business realm.
Well, that would get you a job.
Or that would get you a job.
Right.
And things that Dame and I talk about, and same thing with my model, my business model, is that I'm not really trying to change the system, right? Because there are people within the system that don't want to change anyway. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to try to change the school, one school at a time. I'm going to change the system one school at a time. Right. So that means who really wants it is going to get it. So when me and Dame have been talking about how to help, it's not necessarily about going out there and saying, you know what, let's just go build a whole bunch of schools. The reality is we got 90 to 100 principals that we see all the time that we can help do things within their school. They're struggling with some things, with things that they need. My thing is, well, then let's just go help them, right? We don't got to spend all that time fighting with a system that doesn't want to be changed. If one of our principals said, listen, you know what, I want a studio in my school. Currently, we're working on two to different schools right now where we're putting audio and visual studios in their school, all of them right now. But again, it's really the mindset of change it one school at a time. Like, forget the system. That take too long. That fight, I don't want that fight.
I love what you said, because you're identifying people that already want that change and are at the top of their food chain in terms of they can actually implement that change. So you don't have to go re-explore. You already have someone there that's able to reimagine with you, and I think that's what we need.
Yes.
Governor!
Can you like pet him or something? Thank you.
Dan just walked in. I see him.
So, I mean, we kind of were ending this on a note, Dennis, of you telling us, Dame, obviously you telling us what OSG is doing. I know I like to hear from you that you're not all and only about the election. You guys have your own agenda. And I think it's just encouraging. I hope people look at this and feel a little bit less hopeless about trying to overtake the system, because as you just articulated, Dennis, that's a lost cause. It's not, it's beyond that. It really is kind of creating something.
And Jordan, understand this. Young people know that. It's the adults, it's the older generation that's pushing that agenda on kids. Allow them to make their own decision.
Absolutely.
I mean, I understand the whole idea of telling people to get out and vote, but also I'm saying is, don't tell somebody to go vote. But I don't particularly I like this bad candidate over this bad candidate, so let's just choose the lesser of the two evils. Like, what kind of business model is that? What kind of mindset is that to tell somebody, you may not like him, you may not like this candidate, but do this because we want this one out. Like, I just feel like you just can't tell young people that. Have them come with a real agenda of what they're going to do to change the world, and then the young people can get out and vote. Forget this mindset of, just because, the election comes around, I got to get out there and vote that first Tuesday of November just because they told us to do it.
And also people have to understand, everyone should definitely vote. But California and New York, no matter if I vote or not, we're not winning. It's the swing states. It's Florida and it's Pennsylvania. It's those states that we need to get in. That's what we need to get. And it's not really just kids. White women need to step up too this time.
Absolutely. And I think
what I'm saying, period. And I'm not even going to sugarcoat.
we need that, and I think we need to be paying attention to our local and municipal elections. You need to know who your superintendent is. You need to know who your school board elected officials are in your neighborhood. You need to know who you're voting into office, because they're going to appoint the Secretary of Education. State legislators. All of these things matter on a micro level, and people aren't paying attention to that.
With all those words,
what they mean.
If they don't know what that means, that was just, what I mean? So whoever knows what it means probably might even know all those things. The problem is that language and that vernacular has to become common. That needs to be the new gossip. That should be the new chat. That should be the new what's happening on the Breakfast Club. Is, damn, you see what they're doing on the law? Blah, 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 blah. And that's actually what the whole purpose of what y'all supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? Like, y'all younger, and this generation is fighting this generation. I feel like everything I've been saying for the last 10 years just went to y'all. And I wasn't talking to nobody else but y'all because I was on the internet. I was like, TV, radio was for ducks. So I started talking to other people.
But that's the mark of a true legend, I think, is pouring back into the generation after them. And you've certainly done that, Dennis. You've done that, and y'all will continue to do that. And so we, as the next generation, thank you guys for kind of paving that path for us, seriously.
Yeah, we lift y'all up 110%. And you're right, Damon. If people don't know how and why government functions, then they could give less of a damn. Our goal through politicking is absolutely to create a map that helps people understand when you go to vote, you're voting for an interest or you're voting for somebody that you believe in, but you should never just walk in for the hell of it, as you said, Dennis.
There has to be a better way, but thank you so much, gentlemen. This was amazing. And Politicking TV signing out.